Okay, right, let's get on with this then. So, here's our three characters. We've got the big, heavy guy, and the hound, and the ant thing here as well. So the first thing to look at really is where they are placed currently in the scene. So if we zoom right into the grid, you can see that the grid, if I just change that there, that all three of these characters are on 0, 0, 0. So there's the light one, there's the medium, there's the heavy. So they're all in the same place in terms of the pivot point. Also as well, if you look at it from the front, they are right down the center line as well. Like I mentioned in the previous lecture, Unreal is expecting your character to be at 0, 0, 0. So any kind of deviation from the left or the right of this is going to make the character in slightly the wrong place. This is also really important going down the center line, is that when it comes to skinning, hopefully, when you mirror this, you are going to mirror from one side to the other. And as long as your character is down this center line here, the mirroring should work without any problems. The last thing as well that I mentioned is that you need translate and rotate to be set to 0, and the scale should be set to 1. You'll not notice anything going wrong within Maya, but as soon as you get to Unreal, this will almost definitely cause problems if these aren't set to their actual proper scales. So in terms of joints, we'll have a look at some joints and how to kind of set up the rig. The first thing you really want to consider is where most of the bends are going to happen within your rig. So for instance, if you look at the spine across this guy here, just turn the other two off, his spine's probably going to be bending along this kind of archway here. Okay, certainly more than what it's going to be bending from left to right. It's probably going to be bending up and down. Same for the legs as well. If you look at where the legs are, just go in the left view perhaps. Now, the chances are his legs, you're going to have a bone here, a bone here, and a bone here. So the bending here is going to be around this axis. So really when you start kind of adding all your joints, you want to try and add them on the plane where the bending or the rotation is going to occur. The neck, it doesn't really matter, but it's always kind of useful just to keep the same side as the spine. Any kind of extra bones you might need, we can add in at a later point. We've got the head and we've got the jaw. If you want to add some bones to the ears, that's entirely up to you. But we'd probably need one for the area around in between the legs, and maybe an extra bone here to help your guy breathe if you want him to breathe as well. Okay, right. For the hound, exactly the same thing. You know, we've got the spine kind of traveling along the top here, up into the neck, into the head, and we've got the jaw as well. Slightly different in that this guy has the same number of joints but slightly orientated differently or placed differently to what the big guy and the ant creature will do, mainly because his foot is actually off the ground and he runs on his toes. So when you create the bones for this, you're going to need thigh, calf, foot, and then probably a toe bone at the end. The same for this. Now if you think of this as an arm, you're going to need upper arm, forearm, hand, finger. You're not going to need to go into a huge amount of detail with this. He has been set up to have individual fingers or toes, but I certainly wouldn't go this far. I mean, just a toe bone would be enough for our purposes. Finally, we've got the light person, which is what I'm going to concentrate on for these video tutorials. This is quite different in terms of the way that it's laid out. So you don't want to look at this from the side view, obviously, because you're looking directly down the bone. So it would be better to do this guy's legs from the front and do the bones outwards and then to his claw or his feet, whatever. And do the body as you would front to back, up the neck, head as well. Okay, so that's the end of that bit. So to make this a bit easier, we need to basically have a few things ready. Stay in the rigging tab because the menu system along the top is based on the actual rigging and skinning part of this process. And the kind of rigging tab down here has a few of the little things that we need. If you're more of an icon person, you might find using the icons better. I tend to go between the two. So the first thing we want to do is get the root bone down to tell Unreal that this is the center of the object, and from then on we can start drawing some extra parts and the actual skeletal structure itself. If you want, click on the skeleton and just break off the tab using this dotted line here. You might kind of find that these are a bit handier to have if they're nearby, rather than going to the menu all the time. Just have a play with it really, get kind of used to how it works before you get stuck into actually creating the bits themselves. So you can click on create joints, or you can use the create joint button up at the top here. You must be in an orthographic view to make this easier to do. You can do it in perspective if you want to, and it will drop all of the pivot points on the ground plane as you work, but it makes sense to kind of actually see the object from front or back or side or whatever. So if we just zoom in a bit, and we want to place the first one here, this is the root. This isn't going to be skinned to anything, it's just to tell Unreal where it should be in space. So think about maybe with this, where you want the first kind of, where you want the pelvis to be maybe. So do you think maybe having it there or there would be a good place? Or perhaps back here. So I'm going to place mine here for where I want the main root to be, and then it will branch off backwards and forwards and up the rest of the kind of body to do the rest of the skeleton. Okay, so for this one, if we zoom in a bit, if you hold down X, we can get the grid turned on. So click on the first bone, the second one maybe somewhere around there, then perhaps we want to go up to this point. If we move along, you might find you want to do a couple of bones in here if you want to make it slightly flexible, but no, we can put one, let's say put it there perhaps. Another one up to the neck. Doesn't need many neck bones, 2 or 3 maybe, so we'll have 1, 2, 3. So that's where the head's going to pivot around unless you want to put an extra one in. So we can put an extra one in, maybe there. We need the eyes to be part of this as well, but we can do that in a different angle. So that's just basically an extra bone. It doesn't mean anything, and we can go right down to the jaw point. So either down there to the jaw and click on the end. So we have a jaw there as well. We don't need to do all of this. This is all basically fixed unless you want to give it a beak that moves. It's entirely up to you. But you might think, you know, what's the point in this little thing here? If we right click, it draws the last bone. If you forget to do that, you can just click on it, hit delete, and it'll delete that bone. So you might think everything is in the right place. Now we can continue off and perhaps do the tail. So if you just select bones again, do this, and rather than left clicking, right click to finish it off, and there's our tail. At the moment that's probably enough for the skeleton really. So we can see what it looks like if we zoom out. So there's our root bone, there's our skeleton going up through the neck into the head, and there's the tail. If you don't want the jaw to be in that place, we can move it. So if you just select the joint that you want to move, you can move it around quite happily, but as you see, it drags the whole bone, so it's also dragging this bone as well. If you want the control just on that particular object, if you press D or insert, you can go into pivot mode. If you're in pivot mode, you can then just move the individual bones around. So you might kind of find that maybe the joint is in a better place. I don't know, let's say put it there. Okay. Perhaps grab a hold of this one, move this one down a little bit. You might want to put it somewhere closer to the eyes, but you know, it doesn't really matter for this bone in particular. So let's just leave it there. The neck seems okay. You might perhaps want a couple of extra joints here to attach things to, like I have. Or you might want to kind of like give the tail a couple of extra joints rather than just one big solid piece of movement. If you want to add a bone, you can do insert joints. If you click on insert joints, what it allows you to do is actually click on a joint, and then if you drag down the direction, it adds a bone. So let's say we want a couple, we can do it that way. And that's added a couple of extra bones into that joint. Perhaps do the same along here. You might want one there as well. Okay. If you want to get rid of a bone, make sure you turn off insert joints or it'll keep going. Just select maybe the selection tool. Click on the joint that you don't want and hit remove joints. And it creates that single joint back into the one above it again. So again, if you click on that one, click on remove joints, and we're back to the one bone again. So as you can see here, we've got two separate joints that we need to join together. So it's always best to do the child then the parent. So we want to join this joint to this object. Okay. Click on that one, hold down Shift, and click on the second one, and look at connect joint. There's two different ways of doing this, so we'll have a look at the actual options for it. The options, we've got parent joint and connect joint. At the moment it says parent joint. If you click on apply, it creates a new bone, so it joins the bone, this one to this one, by creating a new link. If you want to go to the connect joint and do the same thing again, this actually moves the joint into place and it creates a connection as well. So with those two selected, if you hit apply again, it moves it into place. It has made a connection, but not to that joint. If you were to select simply this bone and pull it away, you can see that it's made a connection to the joint above and not the one that we actually want. So if you just undo that and go back to what we had, parent joint I found to be the better of the two, the more useful of the two. Click on connect and it's done. So the problem that we have here is that our main root bone here for the character is assigned to these two big sections of mesh. If we were to rotate it, we'd be rotating both sections, and there's no way we can separate these at the moment. Realistically, what we want is another little tiny joint here, so when we rotate the whole thing, we can kind of counter rotate the back part again. So the easiest way to do this would be to select the bone here and disconnect it. So if we disconnect that joint, it creates a separation between the two, so you can see that I can now individually move this around. And similarly, if I was to select this and rotate it, it doesn't rotate the tail anymore. If we just select this joint and bring it in a bit, it can be quite close. We might want to move this slightly as well, perhaps go into pivot mode and just kind of move these perhaps a bit closer to wherever these 2 points are. Now, this is really small here. That's not a problem, we can change that in a little bit, but the connection is still correct. So now when we do our parenting and do the connect joint, we can control, obviously still the same skeleton with everything, but we now have the option to kind of counter rotate this back. So at the moment our skeleton currently stands like that. So a few of the things maybe we can add if we want to. I added a couple of little joints up here that perhaps you could use as attachment points for maybe other things in the game. You can also use them for things within Unreal that you want to attach, say, a particle effect to. And it's just a nice point in contact to put down and say, here Unreal, I want you to fire a particle effect from this bone or this joint within the skeleton. It's a nice easy thing to add. Go to the joint. You can be fairly, rough with it. Left click, right click, and there's the joint that I want. We only want the one joint in space. So if we select that and just delete it, we're left with just the one little dot, or the one joint. If we select that joint, kind of put it somewhere where you think it might be useful, and then do the same thing again. Select the joint you want to attach it to, and hit connect. And you can see that it's now basically being connected to this joint, and as you rotate this joint, it should rotate with it. So we've got something now that's looking okay for the skeleton. You might want to add this joint here to perhaps the two side ones. You might find it more interesting that way. So we can just move it into place. So let's deal with the legs next. Like I said, we don't really kind of want to do the legs of this creature from the side. We want to do it from the front, realistically. So if we go into the front view, and let's zoom in on this area. So we've got kind of a socket set up here, and further along the leg we've got perhaps a kneecap, and then the foot, and then kind of the claw there at the end. If you wanted to, we could go straight in just to create a bone here straight away, but it might be nice to get some kind of subtle movement on this part of the bone here. So if we select the joint, perhaps somewhere around there, and then to the middle of the joint. If you work our way along in the joint there, a bit further along again, so perhaps to about there, and then along to the toe with a right click there. So we have our symbol set up there. It's not in the right place, obviously, because it's drawn it on the XY plane. Just move it forward until, perhaps go to the top view. Get it a bit more accurate. That should do for that. Okay. So we've got that done. We can have a look at these joints. So there's all the joints that we have. If we shift select all of that, edit, we can either kind of just Control D it to duplicate it, or hit the button. Back up to the individual joint, drag that along. It's not exactly right at the back here, so let's go into the edit pivot mode. Drag these two to somewhere more useful. So not a huge amount of movement there, but we're not expecting much movement there anyway. And we probably want some eyeballs as well. So it doesn't really matter which view you put these from. They're all going to be they're all going to kind of end up in the same kind of place. So let's just do it from the front. Again, kind of quick placement. And drag this forward. We can sort out kind of the exact position of this in a little while, but that seems to be okay at the moment. I think we've got that there. Select that and disconnect it. Oh, sorry. We've got kind of an eyeball placement there in about the right place. So at the moment everything we've done is down the right hand side. What we need to do now is duplicate it across. So we have exactly the same bones on the left and right hand side. So let's just get this bone lined up in the middle of the eyeball. Obviously we're going to need it to kind of rotate the eye, and we don't want it being off center. So when it rotates it comes out of its socket. Just go into wireframe mode, zoom in perhaps. If we hold down the V key, we can go into snap to point, and perhaps the easiest way would be to snap to this point here at the end of the eyeball. So hold down V, drag it across, and we should be able to snap to the eyeball there, which we have. Once you've done that, go into the front view and just zoom in a bit. And we are still in local mode, so as we drag this we're going to start dragging it off center, which is not what we want. So if you double click on the tool, change that back to world again, and we should be able to drag this along to where the center of the eyeball is. So it's this line here, the first line we're about to come across. So if we drag it along to about there, that should hopefully be what we need to rotate the eye. Right, so if we hide the mesh, there is one side of our skeleton with all the joints that we need, including the head, the eyeballs, and everything else. Oh, we've just got to join this, haven't we? So there is the child. There is the parent. If we select connect joint, so there we go. So this is, when we come to rotating the head, the eyeball is going to move with it, and obviously the jaw as well. So we need to connect the two legs up. So we select this here, and this one is as good as any. You could, I guess, attach it to this one as well, but no, that's as good as that one. So we'll just connect that one. That's that one done. And for this one here, realistically, we want to attach it to this, whether that's the thorax or to this part here. So if we just select this one here and click connect as well, there's our connection. If you hold down shift and select all the bones, now we've got bones of various sizes here, big and small, and all this kind of overlapping that's going on. There is a radius here you can change if you want to. It's currently set to 0.879, that is. We can do, I don't know, do 0.5. And there's all the bones set to 0.5. Might make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Although ultimately kind of we want to hide these really. The eyeball might be worth making a bit bigger because we're actually going to use it with the mesh. So if we turn light back on, let's increase the radius a little bit. Maybe make it the actual size or near enough of the eyeball. Okay. So in order to mirror this, all we need to do is select the joints that we want to use. And if we have a look at mirror joints, we need to know the axis that it's going to mirror on. Okay, so the axis we want is the YZ plane, because you want the mirror basically being this plane here, and that's YZ. At the moment it's set to XY, so it will just simply use this plane. We don't want that plane because all it's going to do is pretty much put it in the same place according to this. So set it to YZ and hit apply, and you can see that it's added the bone as a mirror image to the other side of the object. So we can do the same again for this joint here. It's still on YZ. There's the joint there. We do this little section sticking up, so we just want to click on the single bone by itself, hit apply, and the great big eyeball, hit apply. So we now have all our joints in the right place. Hopefully they should all line up, and there is our mesh that we need for this rig.